President Trump calls him a true MAGA attorney. Let's get dialed in. Hello and welcome to Texas Talkin, the show where we tell you what's really going on in politics, not the sanitized, focus grouped version your local news tries to force feed you. I'm your host, Shiloh Platts, delivering quick wit in an iconic cowboy hat that makes leftists and their enablers strangely uncomfortable. Tonight, let's talk about a guy you may have heard of, and if you haven't, well, you're about to. Aaron Reitz. He's running for Texas Attorney General, and unlike most people in politics, he actually knows what the job is supposed to be, which is refreshing considering half of Austin seems to think Attorney General is just code for state celebrity with a law degree. Now, Aaron Reitz isn't your typical smile, wave, and cut a ribbon politician. This is a guy who's been in the trenches, a Marine veteran, a rock-solid constitutional conservative, and someone who doesn't just talk about the rule of law, but has actually read it twice, probably while doing push-ups. The guy is sharp. He clerked for a federal judge and very recently served in the Trump administration. But here's the best part. He understands that the Attorney General's job is not to make friends, but to make enemies. The right enemies. You know, the ones who think the border is just a suggestion, that election integrity laws are optional, and that your Second Amendment rights come with an expiration date. Aaron Reitz is the kind of guy who will walk into a courtroom and say, nope, not in Texas. Try California. They'll roll over for you there. He's the kind of attorney general who will actually pick fights worth having, whether it's stopping woke corporations from trying to control our state, or make sure prosecutors in blue cities remember that crime is still illegal. And I know what some people are thinking, but Aaron Reitz is young, correct, which means he's got energy, stamina, and enough backbone to make the establishment very nervous. Frankly, I'd take one Aaron Reitz over 100 of the sleepy, go-along-to-get-along Republicans who've been in office since the Bush administration. So here's the bottom line. If you want an attorney general who will be fearless, relentless, and let's just say it, a little bit dangerous to the people who deserve it, then Aaron Reitz may be your guy. Because the truth is, Texas needs more than a lawyer in the attorney general's office. Texas needs a fighter, and Aaron Reitz knows how to fight. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen, because he's here with me next. And joining me now is a Marine who has been called Ken Paxton's offensive coordinator. He's running for Texas Attorney General, Aaron Reitz. Aaron, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Shiloh, happy to be here.
So I put up a very unscientific poll yesterday, both on X and on Facebook. And as of this afternoon on Facebook, between you, Joan Huffman, and Mays Middleton, you're at 57% of the vote. However, on X, you reeled in an astonishing 73%. I wasn't surprised necessarily that you won the poll, but that the 73% number came in. To what do you attribute that level of interest in your candidacy?
Well, look, I would say based on the results, I actually think it's a highly scientific poll, totally reliable. You can take it to the bank. I think this is exactly how we're going to see this campaign play out. But no, look, in all seriousness, Shiloh, I think that people are wanting somebody who's got a proven track record actually doing the things that are expected out of a Texas Attorney General. When I served as the presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed head of the Office of Legal Policy at DOJ under President Trump. And when he nominated me, he called me a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. And there's a reason for that. It's my background litigating, investigating, suing, defending, and appealing on all the major issues that you care about, that your viewers care about, that your followers on social media care about. They know that my two opponents right now are just sort of GOP Inc. standard issue, just lame legislators who say yay or nay to certain things. I'm not disrespecting the legislative process, but what I'm saying is that these are just low energy, low T, boring, conventional picks.
I like you already.
Look, I got so much tea. I've got so much tea. The hair already came out, man. So it's like it's all good. But the problem is that like those My two opponents inspire no confidence in the voters about who's going to get in and succeed Ken Paxton as a real fighter for the things that we care about, whether it's border security, election integrity, Second Amendment, free speech, religious liberty, parental rights, transing of our kids. You pick the issue, and I have fought on those things, and my body is covered in battle scars from having fought those legal fights on behalf of the state of Texas and on behalf of Texans. And I think that is electrifying people. It's getting people excited, especially when you compare it to the sort of snooze fest that is your average climber GOP swamp creature that wants to rise to the next rung in the ladder. That's what I think explains it. I think people are fired up about this race. It's organic. And not only does that excitement express itself in your airtight, highly reliable, cross-checked scientific poll.
Very scientific poll.
Highly scientific. One of the most scientific polls I've seen in a long time.
The best.
It's the best poll. Many people are saying it's one of the best polls out there in Texas politics right now. It also reflects in our fundraising. You'll recall that I announced in mid-June, and with only 2 weeks left in the quarter, right? As a non-incumbent, non-office holder, no chairmanship, first time statewide, nothing. I'm just a former DOJ guy, former Cruz guy, former Paxton guy, just at a law firm. From 250 individual donors in 2 weeks, we raised $2.15 million.
That is astounding.
It's not just record breaking, it's record setting. No one has done this before. And people are fired up. So whether you want to look at the metrics of our fundraising or we want to look at the Shiloh polls, people are rallying to this flag. And it's because of what I bring to the table and the vision that I have for this office.
So I made a comment based on some of the responses that I saw on the Facebook poll, because you can see individual responses on Facebook polls, of course, yesterday.
Right.
You laid out a brilliant case in response to that. I made the comment that I noticed some of what I would call soft Republicans had voted favorably for Mays Middleton, your, I would say, top contending opponent. And it sort of surprised me because Mays Middleton is not known as a soft or a moderate Republican in the Texas Senate. His voting record in the Senate is what many would call right wing. He's among the most conservative senators in the Texas Senate. You laid out a brilliant response to that point that I made, and I was hoping you might be able to share that with my viewers.
Yeah, look, there's no question that if the criteria that we were evaluating attorney general candidates by was on one's legislative record, I think Mays is a serviceable legislator. Look, my beef with Mays is not personal. I don't even think he's a terrible senator. It's fine. He's a good man. He's a decent man. He appears to be a good husband and a good father. He's never done me wrong personally. But my contention is, under the Texas Constitution, the Texas Attorney General, quote, shall represent the state of Texas in all courts and pleas. That's the job that that these candidates, myself included, are applying for. This is not a legislative job. Your legislative record gives some inclination about like your ideological leanings, but it actually sheds no light whatsoever on how you're going to lead very complex litigation and legal teams in defending the state or prosecuting crimes or defending free speech or working to secure the border, or whether or not you can lead an executive branch legal office. And so why is it that in your poll are there so many mods and squishes who would vote for or go for Mays Middleton? Look, that's not only true on your poll, but it's also true on the campaign trail. I experience it all the time when I, work myself through my phone list and I'm calling different people from different backgrounds. It is almost always the case that the mods, the liberal Republicans, they really like Mays Middleton. And I think there's several reasons for that. Number one, even though his legislative record is more conservative than not, you have to look at what the standard deviation is of your average Republican in the Senate. It's not like the House, where you get a pretty big, difference between the most conservative and the most liberal. In the Senate, it's all really, really aligned. So really what you're talking about is, even if I were to grant he's in the top 3 conservatives in the Senate, he's really no different than the 20th most conservative. There's just not really a difference whatsoever from him to dropping down the line and who's most conservative. So it really doesn't say much that he's got this conservative track record. Second, Mays himself is an utterly inoffensive person. He is a sweet guy. He's a nice guy. Nobody says he's a bad guy. I don't say he's a bad guy, right? He is a gentle, unassuming. I think one of his supporters in one of your comments was like, he's a meek person. I think he is a meek person. He's a nice person. He's a sweet guy. Bless his heart. But he doesn't have any fight. There's no fight. No one's intimidated by Mays Middleton. No Democrat has ever said anything bad about him. Whereas when I got confirmed by the Senate, the senior Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, put out a full-blown press release in which he called me a danger to the rule of law. I mean, Cory Booker said during my hearing that I gave him and his colleagues chills down their spine. And so he's very palatable to mods, to Democrats, to squishes, because that's his personality. He's not a threat. He's not a fighter. He doesn't have fangs. No one cares. If Mays Middleton threatens you, the response is not fear. It's sort of a giggle, right? And I think another reason why mods are very comfortable with him is just his background. Look, I think, again, Mays, God bless him, he inherited his dad's multi-million-dollar oil and gas company. And so he is cut from the very, very upper elite echelons of Texas economic and social circles. And so those people tend to be more mod. Those are the people that he goes to dinner parties with and hosts fundraisers with and sends their kids to school with. And it's the same schools that he came from. And so he breathes that mod air. And then the fourth and final reason why I think mods are so comfortable with Mays is because he is deeply anti-Paxton. And so the mods hate Ken Paxton. We know this. I think we're in agreement on this. Most of our listeners are in agreement on this.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a big Ken Paxton fan. Obviously, I was his deputy for 3 years. And he said a lot of great things about me since I got into this race. But this is sort of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so what Mays has demonstrated is a willingness to expend an unbelievable amount of both financial and political capital trying to take Ken Paxton out. And it goes all the way back to the fall 2020 coup, when a lot of Mays' good friends and even the people that he works with now in the political world were behind the coup of October of 2020, when I stood by Paxton and I was his deputy at the time. Then you move from fall of 2020 to 2022, the election cycle, 21 and 22. Mays Middleton spent nearly $500,000, okay, $500,000 of his own family money bankrolling Ken Paxton's primary challengers. Why? Because he bought into the lie that Ken Paxton was unfit to lead our state as AG. And Mays was perfectly happy to cut checks to anybody who was going to facilitate that. The left and the mods loved it. Then you move into 2023. And in the spring of 2023, you look at how he sprinkled his money around to all of the House members who were not only on the House of Impeachment Manager team, but also all the people that voted to impeach. A huge number of them were beneficiaries of Mays Middleton's campaign contributions. And then lastly, when the trial moved over, when the sham impeachment was shoved through in 3 days, it was based on unverified and unsworn evidence and testimony. The Senate on September 5th of 2023, it was the first day of the impeachment trial, when the Senate had an opportunity to consider what's called a no evidence motion summary judgment. To basically, if you vote yes on it, the whole case goes away, right? And if this were a real court of law rather than a political sham trial, then any jury would have said, yeah, there's no evidence. Nothing's been sworn. Nothing is verified. It was rushed through, in 3 to 4 days over by the lower chamber that had an axe to grind against Paxton. And so there's no evidence here. So we're going to vote yes on the no evidence motion for summary judgment. Just get rid of the thing, right? 6 Republican senators voted yes, which is to say those 6 senators knew that this thing was BS and they wanted to get rid of it. But Mays Middleton and, frankly, my other opponent, Joan Huffman, both voted no. Why? Because they wanted to drag Ken Paxton through the humiliation ritual that was the sham impeachment trial. And so for all those reasons, whether it's, hey, his voting record really doesn't illuminate what kind of an AG he's going to be. It's the fact that he is dispositionally, constitutionally, his personality makes moderates very comfortable. He's an easy pill to swallow. He's a gentle young man. Number 3, it's the air that he breathes. He hangs around. These are his best friends. They all go to the same private schools that he went to. And then lastly, he's deeply, deeply, deeply anti-Paxton. He's one of the most anti-Paxton candidates in the race right now. Joan Huffman is maybe a close second. I don't know. They're tied. We can litigate that. And so for all those reasons, mods love Mays Middleton. I don't care what your voting record is. Doesn't make you fit to be the Attorney General of the state of Texas.
Aaron, don't let this go to your head too much, but your style, your presence, your delivery is very Trump-esque. I've got to tell you. I love it.
The thing that I have with Trump is, I've always been an ally and a friend of President Trump's. I've always been a supporter, even going back when I was Paxton's deputy. And in, the November 2020 election happened. It was a BS election, and Ken Paxton and I filed Texas v. Pennsylvania in December of 2020 to challenge the constitutionality of the election, the manner in which the elections were run in 4 states. And so we went directly to the Supreme Court. We didn't make it through on technicality grounds, on standing grounds. We can talk about that if you want to, but it gets a little bit legal wonky. And so I've stood by the president, okay? And then you fast forward, and when President Trump got elected again in the fall of 24, he looked across the landscape and said, look, I've got an America First law and order agenda, a justice agenda that I want to advance. Who are my guys going to be? And fortunately, he took a look at the work that I had done, both for him and for Texas and for our country. And he said, look, I want this guy. I'm going to interview this guy at Mar-a-Lago. We had a great visit with him and Attorney General Bondi and the whole team that was there. And then a week later, he put out his Truth Social post in December of 2024, in which he called me a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. That's what we need as the next AG. We want a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. Someone who has been vetted, tested, and proven and certified, not only by President Trump, but by dozens of people on his team. My opponent, Mays middleweight, as I like to call him, or Mays with an exclamation point, like Jeb with an exclamation point. Look, the only picture that he has is one that he paid $50,000 for at a fundraiser. Okay. And by the way, we're going to start putting out little asterisks with disclaimers that in the pictures that I have with the president in the Oval Office or down in the border, it's going to be like asterisk, not paid for at a fundraiser, which is the only picture that Mays middleweight has with President Trump. So he's going to go out there. Everybody's going to say, oh, I'm so MAGA. I'm MAGA. Brother.
We see John Cornyn doing it right now, which is a total joke.
It's a total joke. And he's editing the video and the audio and all that stuff. And look, I think that here's the thing about the Senate race that's a little bit different than the race that I'm in is John Cornyn can run I'm president's man in the Senate ads all day long.
Nobody's going to believe it. Nobody
believes it. It actually doesn't matter. So if you want to light your money on fire, paying for ads that are going to convert no one to your side, that's fine. My race is a little bit different where everyone, including people, unless you are deeply tied into hashtag TextLedge world, people around the state have no idea who Mays Middleton or Joan Huffman, or frankly, they're just now getting to know me. Okay.
That's
so
right.
We're all low on name ID.
Yep.
So the importance is though, if Mays, or if anybody goes out there, it's not just Mays, if anybody goes out there and says, I'm so MAGA, I'm Mr. or Miss MAGA, right? You've got to back that up with evidence. And so my opponents are going to say, I've defended the president's MAGA agenda. In what way, brother? Man, if you applied to even an entry-level job at the Justice Department during Trump 47, Your resume would have been thrown out the door immediately because you are utterly unqualified to handle even the most simple legal cases imaginable. And by the way, even if you could handle one of these legal cases, you wouldn't have passed the vetting because all you've done is sit around, and I'm pointing because your viewers can see the reflection. I'm sitting across from the Capitol right now. But like the only thing you've done is attempt to advance pre-baked, pre-approved legislation to get your ratings up. Who cares? That doesn't show me that you have what it takes to be a MAGA lawyer. That's the inquiry. Are you ready to be an attorney leading lawyer teams, legal teams, to advance justice, law, order, the Constitution, Texans' rights, and all these things? And there's only one candidate in the race who has a record doing any of that stuff. And it's me. It's not my opponent. It's not even close.
How would you describe your legal philosophy in one word?
One word. My legal philosophy in one word. I would say, look, if I were a judge, I would say I'm an originalist. I'm applying to be an AG, so I'm going to combine words and say I'm a law and order guy. Okay, there are hyphens there, law and order, so it's technically one word.
We'll call it one.
I'm
word.
a law and order guy. I'm a law and order guy. I mean, that's the bottom line. Look, I like when our legislature passes good laws. I like a good legislative session. I like a good special session. I'm always happy. You know, this past legislative session, we got school choice. We've got prayer in schools. We've got the 10 Commandments posted up in private schools. Or in public schools, excuse me. We've got, good women's and girls' privacy bills that are coming through. That's all great. But as a
now you've got to defend those laws.
You've not only got to defend them, right? So you're not only in a defensive posture, but you've got to reach to the wall and grab these law books off the wall and go on offense with these things. And unless you know how, right? Unless you know how to, I'm just going to make something up. You take Texas's, girls' privacy laws, such as they are, right? You got to take them off the shelf and you've got to go launch an investigation that probes every single potentially defiant school district or public entity or county or city or whatever it is that you're doing. You have to know, like the law to an AG candidate like myself is like an armory that you walk into. And there's all kinds of weapons that are beautifully hanging on the wall. But unless you've been in combat before and you know, hey, we're fighting this kind of enemy, I'm going to need this kind of caliber weapon. I'm fighting this kind of enemy. I need just a long distance rifle. That's what I need. And I need to be able to scope in and go far. I'm fighting this kind of enemy. Nope. I need fully automatic. I need to be able, and I need air support for this, right? Like you have to know not only the nature of the enemy, but you have to also understand how to wield these weapons in both a defensive and an offensive posture. And again, I've proven myself to do that. As you pointed out, Shiloh, at the beginning of this call, Ken Paxton always referred to me as his offensive coordinator because I would take the dead letter of the law, which is great. It's like you get it in the statute, governor signs it, photo op, super, we love it, great, Super Bowl session, whatever. And then you leave it to the AG and he's got to bring life to that sort of thing. And I've got a record doing it. It's why Paxton brought me in as his deputy. It's why Cruz brought me on as his chief of staff. It's why Trump brought me in as his Senate confirmed head of the Office of Legal Policy. And it's why, by the way, all of my colleagues in the Justice Department and superiors, the day I left and announced for AG, all of them, there's like 15 different quotes from all these people that I work with about how I'm going to advance the MAGA agenda here in Texas. So anyway, who knows what's going to happen with the special session in terms of getting new laws. I mean, look, obviously the focus is on the maps, but even those maps, brother, like, look, I was in Paxton's office when the 2020 census happened, followed by the 21 special session that got us the maps in the special session of 21.
The Democrats fled in 2021 as well.
They did. Now, back then they fled. The reason that they gave back then was over, like, we were tightening up election laws. And so they were like, oh, these laws are racist and discriminatory. And
same argument they're using now about the redistricting. It's the same recycled argument every time.
Same every time. It goes nowhere every time. The arguments suck, right? But they're going to get as much money as they can out of their little stunt, whatever. But the point is that, like, even just the maps, look, these Democrats are going to come crawling back one by one. I think we're 4 short of a quorum right now. they're going to come back soon enough. Okay. I want them sooner rather than later, but they're going to come back. And then as soon as we get a quorum, those maps are going to pass. But the litigation will just begin. And frankly, Paxton will have to deal with it first for like his remaining 18 to 24 months of his term. But then the next AG, when I get sworn in January 2027, like that's going to be on me to continue to defend. And do you want somebody who has experience defending redistricting maps? Somebody who is a friend of the White House and the West Wing and the Justice Department, which by the way is going to be involved in all of this litigation? Or do you want somebody who has bought their way into public office and is taking safe votes in the Senate? I mean, the choice is clear to me.
So you mentioned going on offense, and incidentally, the most common concern that I hear from voters, from people who watch this show, and from my followers on Facebook is losing Ken Paxton in the Attorney General's office because he's such an offensive fighter. I would say, based on this conversation, my viewers can look at you and make a conclusion that you would be a fighter. And I know that's so important to so many of them.
It's critical. And look, I'll tell you this, I remember, I was Ted Cruz's chief of staff for 2 years and most recently through his 2024 statewide reelect. So like, I traveled the state with him. I lived on the bus with him, like the whole 9 yards. Like it was a blast. But even back then, you'll recall, like there were grumblings like, oh, is Paxton going to run for Senate, or like, what's he going to do? And people would always ask me this because they knew that I worked for Paxton. And I would say, look, I don't know what he's going to do at the time. I mean, Paxton is a close friend and mentor, but even back then, nobody knew really that he was going to do it for sure. But the number one concern that I heard even back then, so like September, October, November of 24, and for which has only increased until Paxton announced for Senate, is, gosh, we're excited about Paxton running for Senate, but who in the world can we entrust to turn these keys over to?
Yep.
Like, he served our state so well for over a decade. And we're starting to realize, like, as he's getting ready to leave, that some have taken him for granted. Like, we have no idea how good we have it with him, right? And this is in part why I felt such a strong pull to jump in, because I know what it takes to be a great AG. I know what it takes to be an effective AG. I know what it takes to be an AG with courage. I know that as soon as whoever gets those keys, the pressures that will be on that person. I lived it. I saw it. I was with him in the trenches. I've sustained multiple borderline mortal wounds from some of these things that I've been through with him and the team under Paxton. And so there's only one person in this race that knows that. And so, yes, I would tell you that if folks who like Paxton are worried about who's going to succeed him capably, effectively, ably, confidently, it's me. And so folks should learn more about me at aaronreitz.com.
I was going to ask you where the best place is to go. Say it again.
It's you can go to aaronreitz.com, aaronreitz.com. And you can also follow me on X, Aaron_Reitz, Reitz. If you just Google my name, I'm very active on all social media. I'm pretty easy to find, pretty easy to reach as well. You just DM me and I typically respond.
Very responsive to questions and comments that I've seen of people who comment on my posts. So I think that's refreshing, because most politicians, as you know, they don't respond. So Aaron, I want to thank you for taking time to come on and talk to us tonight.
Sure,
I look forward to watching what you do. I think you have a very bright future. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. Thank you for helping us keep Texas talking. Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.